Our pleasure now to welcome to the show my guy Jason Anderson. Been writing about DC soccer for a long time, and today's a pretty important day. Just 29 days to the Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, and we finally have Vlatko Andonovski's roster. And we'll get to the DC side of it in a moment. There's 4 Washington Spirit players ultimately going. I think that is a bit of a surprise of which 4. But Jason, I saw your tweet earlier as soon as it came out. You're like, this roster's a little weird. Why did you describe it as weird?
I guess I would start with where the positions that were concentrated on and the positions that were maybe they're kind of rolling the dice on some players staying fit for the whole tournament. Only 3 center backs on this team and only 2 full-time center backs. Emily Sonnet has spent this entire season playing defensive midfield.
Right.
If you remember her from the Spirit, of course, she was kind of playing mostly center back here, but has played all over.
And with the national team, she's mostly played on the outside.
Yes, she's been like a utility defender for a long time, but a lot of those minutes have been right back, left back. And then in the midfield, 3 different number 10s, 3 different playmakers on a team that generally only plays 1 and sometimes plays 0. So it's a big concentration of the players everyone loves to see. Who doesn't want to see Rose Lavelle and Ashley Sanchez and Savannah DeMello? But a big question for Vlatko is, are you going to play all of them? And if so, how?
Right. So the midfield has been something that has been a bit of a conundrum. Our good friend Andre Carlisle's been on the show, and he has lamented Vlatko's midfield choices for sure. Like, when I don't say when they open, but I guess they'll probably play their best lineup in the opener, and then they'll probably do some squad rotation, and then ultimately they'll settle on a lineup for like the knockout round games. But like, when you get to that moment, when you get to soup meets nuts, and it's time to play a real opponent with your future on the line or your World Cup status on the line, who do you think ultimately is playing in that midfield?
I think right now the lineup that Vlatko has in his mind, that if everything works out and everyone's healthy, it would be Rose Lavelle, Andy Sullivan, Lindsey Horan. Andy Sullivan as the most defensive midfielder, Lindsey Horan kind of in between the two, Lavelle as an attacking midfielder, though he has shifted. It used to be sort of Lavelle and Horan ahead and Sullivan alone as a lone defensive midfielder. They've shifted now to have Horan closer to Sullivan. There is competition between Sullivan and Julie Ertz, who has made a late return to playing after almost 2 years out after becoming a mom. There are a lot of moms on this team, which is pretty awesome to see. But there's real competition for that spot. And Lavelle hasn't played since April, I want to say, and it was an injury that they thought was minor and have been sort of like, oh, well, don't worry about it. It's a minor injury. And then all of a sudden, late last month, it's a setback, and now no one really knows how healthy she is. Vlatko said, don't worry, everything's fine, but no one has any information to know that it's fine.
Yeah, when DeMello who, for those that don't know, pretty remarkable story, young player, her second year in the NWSL. She has actually never made an appearance for the U.S. Women's Senior National Team. She will become the first uncapped, as they call it, player to make her debut for the U.S. Women's National Team if she were to play at this World Cup in a generation. Shannon Box, who I believe will be a part of the coverage, or has been a part of the coverage on like the lead-up games on HBO and TNT, she was the last one to do it. So her name gets leaked that she's making it. I thought Rose was not going to make the roster because she wasn't going to be healthy. So kind of who is with DeMello in, who do you feel like got left out that you would have expected to be on this roster? And was it even a midfielder, or is it how they construct the roster elsewhere?
I think it's more towards the latter. DeMello is the 7th midfielder on this roster, and I haven't checked every single squad over the past couple of years, but if you ask me anecdotally, I would say it's been 6 midfielders over and over again. Maybe I'm missing one in there where they might have taken a 7th, but this is the surprise that they're going with a 7th midfielder. It's not a surprise based on DeMello's form. She's been outstanding, human highlight reel kind of player. But it is a surprise that he decided to go with the additional midfielder. And I think the pull is kind of in 2 different directions. I mentioned the lack of center backs. Julie Ertz on this team is probably the 4th center back on top of being a defensive midfielder. So they might be a little concerned there. numbers wise. The other player, and this brings it close to DC, I think Ashley Hatch is missing out on this roster for several reasons, but one of them is Vlatko ultimately deciding he needed that one more midfielder.
Yeah. Jason Anderson, writer, Pro Soccer Wire, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Been, again, writing about not just DC soccer, but soccer MLS, NWSL, all around the world for a long time. Always great to have him on the show. So this is where I get salty on a personal level because Hatchie is someone I consider a good friend, and I am so beyond bummed for her. I am biased, but I'm not stupid. I don't know what else she was supposed to do in the league. She has just scored goals, which is her job. And she's done it in a season with the Spirit where she probably hasn't gotten the ball as much as she has in years past. The goal is not necessarily to feed her like it has been in years past, and yet she just always finds a way to be in the right place at the right time. Her assist numbers are up this year. I think she's been phenomenal here in Washington. I think Mark Parsons has been very happy with her. That said, she's born at the wrong time in the wrong country because I don't know who you take off the roster either. I'm so bummed for her, but if you put your analytical hat on, why do you think Ashley Hatch is not the fifth Spirit player on this roster?
Well, it's good that you're asking me because, like, literally right before he came on, I published an article talking about the snubs, and that section is the longest one. The section discussing Hatch because I don't think there's much else she could have done. I think you're right to say that. She's among the Golden Boot leaders in the NWSL. The underlying data backs up her expected goals are the best in the entire league. Even if you take penalty kicks away, which penalty kicks in a knockout tournament, you want good. I mean, they've got Megan Rapinoe. She's an ace at penalties, but Hatch has not missed one in, I think, over 2 years, and she's taken a lot. It's been a busy time for her in that role. Even if you take those off the table, the only player that plays regular minutes that's ahead of her is Sophia Smith, who is in like otherworldly form.
Yeah, once you take out the superhumans, then it's just Hatchie, but Sophia's on a different planet right now.
Yes. So yeah, I think part of Hatch's problem is that Vlatko wanted to bring Alyssa Thompson along, not necessarily as direct competition because they're different types of players, but Thompson's speed is on another level. She might be the fastest player on the entire team. And she's only 18, but that means that her career with this team is going to go, 10 plus years. And you look at her now and you say, this is a player that's going to be a dominant international player for a long time. I understand the rationale to bring her along, to use this World Cup to prepare her for future World Cups. The flip side of that is Megan Rapinoe coming along. We know that this is almost certainly, in her own words, this is almost certainly her last go of any of these tournaments. It was kind of up in the air as to whether she'd even stick around for one more. She's had some injury problems, but I would point to the end of last season when she was fit for about 2 months there at the end of the year. She was unstoppable. It was kind of like, this is 2019 World Cup Megan Rapinoe. I think her coach with OL Reign, Laura Harvey, said that she might have even been above that form for a stretch of that time. And her voice in the locker room is immense. And this is a team that just lost Becky Sauerbrunn. Surprise exclusion due to an injury that just would not heal. So I think there are non-soccer factors that are understandable that would lead Vlatko to take the two of them over Hatch. But at the same time, like I said, 7 midfielders instead of 6. The specificity of some of those players coming in. This is also a team taking 4 specialist fullbacks plus Sonnet, as we talked about, to add a 5th. They've generally only carried 3 for a lot of the last couple of years. So there are a lot of spots where Vlatko really chose to overload, and all of those choices kind of add up to Hatch being probably player 24 out of 23. It's a super harsh decision that I really don't know what else she could have done. There are a lot of things that are completely out of her control that went against her here. And I hope the U.S. doesn't pay for it, but they might find themselves having wished they included her instead of the roster structure that was, it's not crazy, but
yeah,
it's risky.
Yeah, no, I think that's well put. And, unfortunately, this is the second straight World Cup where a beloved Spirit player is player 24. Andy Sullivan was the last cut last time. She's on this roster. Ashley Sanchez on this roster. Aubrey Kingsbury, a surprise. We don't really have time to get into that, but huge congrats to Aubrey, who's probably been the best goalkeeper in the league the last, 5 years, and yet somehow this is her first World Cup, and she has mostly not been in the team, but gets the call here. The one I do want to ask you about is Trin. With Mallory Swanson, formerly Mallory Pugh, for those that don't know, but may have watched the last World Cup and are kind of tuning back in now. Mal had a really, really severe knee injury. She is not on this roster because she is not healthy and will not be for a long time. Do you think Trinity Rodman is the one who takes her place and starts and is ultimately, like, if the U.S. makes it there, starting in the World Cup final?
I think this is really maybe the biggest lineup question right now is Trinity Rodman or Lynn Williams. I think Sophia Smith and Alex Morgan are going to be the starters in 2 of the 3 forward roles. I think it's down to whether Vlatko wants to lean more towards a press-heavy lineup. I might get some flack from Mark Parsons because I think he maybe disagrees with me a little on whether Rodman or Williams is the better pressing forward. If he wants to go more pressing-oriented, I think he'll choose Williams. If he wants a little more creativity, he'll choose Rodman, and it might come down to who they're lining up against in the knockouts. This might be a battle between these 2 players who are both again, in special form at 2 very different teams. So they're both playing really well. But it might be a really, really narrow battle throughout this World Cup where it comes down to what do we need on the day? What do we need? Do we want to prioritize creativity early, or do we want to have it in our back pocket for the last 30 minutes?
Yeah, definitely. And Pino is kind of that perfect creative player in the final 30. That's going to be her role. But ultimately, we'll see. 29 days from now, it gets underway. You're definitely going to want to be reading Jason Anderson's work, not only up until then, but through the tournament as well. If you want more on the snubs, including more on Hatchie, you can read it at Pro Soccer Wire. And it's at Jason DC Soccer, correct, on Twitter?
That's right.
All right, so make sure that you're following him. Create your World Cup list, put Jason on it, and then go from there. Jason, always appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Anytime.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.